where I was 6 weeks out at the last prep. And I'm like, ooh, like, where have my legs gone? All right, I've put this off as long as I possibly could. Probably because I don't really want to talk about it. I'd rather see it in my rear view mirror, if I'm being honest. But I'm getting a lot of questions from a lot of people who supported me in the industry and friends and clients and that sort of thing. And instead of explaining it 150 times, figured I'd just do this video. So it's going to be kind of a conversational, impromptu, spontaneous type of thing. Not a whole lot of notes, not a whole lot of planning. Just my take after processing, because it's been about a week and a half now, how the prep went, how the show went, and how it was working with Justin. And I want to be very clear from the jump. Excuse me. I have mad respect for Justin, his track record, his knowledge, his reputation, everything. I wouldn't have worked with him if I didn't. And there are a lot of pros. There are a lot of things. Well, I don't say a lot of things. There are a few things that didn't go well. But there's certainly a lot of pros. There's a lot of takeaways once I was able to process, kind of go back, and not just the show. The shows are weird. Weird in the sense that a lot of people put their success or failure based on placings. I don't do that. I've had the incredibly unfortunate situation over the years. Maybe it's just bad luck. I don't know. But I typically get deep classes. I get to stand next to Phil Heath at the Colorado State, who really didn't know what the hell he was doing. Driving through McDonald's a few times a week, and he just comes in and smacks the shit out of everybody. Dorian Haywood, a lot of legends from Colorado, because the bulk of my bodybuilding and competing was done in Colorado. So a lot of local legends that a lot of you guys wouldn't know, but the William Reeses, who can come in at 50 and just stomp everybody in the open, light heavies. Doug Stewart, people like that. So, and I say that it's unfortunate, but the truth really is when push comes to shove, I would rather be standing against guys who are really good and potentially take third or fourth than I would to win in mediocre class. A lot of you have heard me say, because it's true, and I'm a realist, I've said over the years, I'm a mediocre bodybuilder at best. And I know some people find that difficult. They're like, oh, but you have to understand, I've been doing this for 41 years. I should be a lot better at it than I am. But my mom said that even if you're not very good at something, if you do something long enough, eventually you'll get good at it. So I get a little better, typically, arguably not this year. But over time, I've gotten better, but slightly above mediocre. So if a mediocre class shows up, I've got a chance of doing well. If a badass field shows up, I'm probably not going to do very well. But at the end of the day, what's important to me isn't really the placing as much. I mean, we all want to place high. I'm not going to bullshit you and tell you that I don't want to place high. But at the end of the day, I'm more concerned about the package that I put on stage. If I put a package on stage that is my best, and I'm happy with that, I can't control who shows up. It just is what I can't control my structure. I was born with it. I can tweak it. I can try to, change, make those subtle changes that accentuate my strong points and kind of downplay my weak points, maybe not show them off as much, things like that. But at the end of the day, you're not going to hide a bad structure. It's just not going to happen. So if I can get on stage and I can present my best package, I'm pretty happy. And I think the disappointment coming off of this last show, it's twofold, actually. Number one, it wasn't a package that I thought was good. I didn't think it was very good. And Justin felt the same way. So things had gone well. I'll explain a little bit more of this in depth in a minute. But things had gone really well till about 6 weeks out, and then it just kind of didn't. Things just didn't go well. So, and a bunch of little things add up to when you stand on stage. This wasn't just a Masters local show or regional show where everybody knows that those classes are typically pretty weak. This is the best in the country. I call it the geriatric division, but it's still the best in the country. And there were some really good physiques, and you can't show up to this caliber of a show and not be at your best and expect to do well. And even if you do well, you're not your best. So there's that. You can go on, you can kind of ride the placing for a couple of days before you realize and process and go, yeah, that really wasn't my best package. And then it's kind of anticlimactic, and you needed to be in better shape. So it was twofold coming off. Number one, it wasn't my best package. Number two, though, was the finality of it being my last show. And I'm not going to get into it too much, but it was cathartic, like I knew that it would be at some point. And it was when I was sitting backstage in my corner when I had come off stage for prejudging. And I text one of my daughters, my youngest daughter. I said, "Hey, where are you?" And she goes, "Look up." So she was, waving from the door entry across the room. So I motioned her to come in. I'm like, "You can come in. It's, prejudging almost done anyway. No one's going to say anything to you." So she comes in, she comes over, and it's kind of cute. The girls, two of my three girls came from Milwaukee to support me. My dad came from Michigan, which was great. To have my family there, obviously I have to have my wife there because she's my crutch, if you will. She's been around for every show, forever and ever. Hallelujah, 32 years married. And I know when people say that, some people are actually miserable and they hide it very well, but we're actually pretty happy, and she's cool and we get along really well. So it's really, it's obviously it's important for me to have that support from her, which I always do. But the girls being there, my dad being there was kind of cool. And the girls and my wife had these shirts made that said Team Skip on top. And there were some pictures on it, but I really didn't pay much attention to it. I thought it was cute. And I thought I was flattered that they would, have these made. But I was sitting in the chair, only been off stage for about 10 minutes. And, was beginning that processing point of knowing that I'm not going to be back for the finals because I'm not going to make top 5. For the night show. And I'm at eye level with the shirt. And I realize, it says Team Skip, but it's got a collage of pictures on it that go back years. Like there's current ones, there's ones from, 8-10 years ago. There's pictures from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, all the way back to my first show. And it just hit me. I'm like, oh shit. So there's always that trigger, right? That emotional trigger. That was the emotion. It's right there in front of my face because she's standing up and I'm sitting down. So anyway, I'm very emotional. And I wanted her to know, even though I did think she did know, trying to explain to her while I'm emotional, I'm not emotional. I'm not upset because of the placing. I'm not upset because I'm not coming back, tonight for the night show. I'm upset because it's all done. After all these years, I've been doing this since I was 14. I started competing when I was 19, and it's just done. The finality of that, and I knew it would hit me. I just didn't know where and when and at what point, but it was going to hit me, and it just hit me. And I was very emotional, and then realized, oh shit, I better straighten up. I got to get out of here because there are going to be people in the room that think I'm upset and emotional because I didn't place. And that's the last thing I'd want anybody to think, because that wasn't the case. So I got myself together real quick, got the hell out of there, and went and ate some food with my family. So it was essentially the finality of it. Here's the thing, though, and I'm going to be honest with you, and I've had this conversation with my wife because it was my wife who actually said, can you really end it on this note? And hearing that from her, because she doesn't usually say anything, I could be 280 and fat and look gross, or I could be, 198 pounds shredded, and I could have a carrot jammed in my ass walking naked back and forth in front of her in the living room. And she would be like, get the hell out of the way. I'm trying to watch TV. Like, she's just apathetic. She's so used to bodybuilding that she's not surprised by anything. She's not impressed by much at all. So on the rare occasion that she comments on a competitor or how a competitor looks, I think, oh, you do like that look, don't you? She's kind of a physique. She likes the physique guys, probably because they're better looking than the bodybuilder guys. But nonetheless, my point is she just doesn't comment much. And she's just seen it all. She's just been in it for a long time. So for her to say, can you really make this your last hurrah? It did make me think I probably have to do this one more time, either by myself or continue to work with Justin, but doing it in more of a collaborative way. And the truth really is, and I want to be clear on something. Not only, do I have mad respect for Justin, at the end of the day, the trainer is responsible for the physique that stands on stage. We all know that. We know that as trainers and everything else, provided the client executes. And I don't have an execution problem. But I'm not putting this on Justin. Justin isn't the issue here. There are things that are part of Justin's methods that, just like my methods or anybody else's methods, that not 100% of your clients are going to respond well to. One of them was, and I'll get into it deeper in a minute, but one of them was the amount of food. I mean, the amount of food eaten for someone like myself who's been around for a long time, who battles distension, that part didn't work real well. It did for fullness and everything else throughout, and some other things. And again, I'll get into that in a minute. The point is there are always going to be those things that don't have. It's not a Justin issue. I have no issues with Justin, and I'll continue to work with him if we can collaborate. We were supposed to collaborate for this one. It was going to be more of, I control the prep, he keeps me in check. Because the reason I went to him in the first place was because the last few years I would have to pull out within the last roughly about 6 weeks because I just had driven myself into the ground. Old school mentality. I've been doing this a very long time. Never had a problem prepping myself in the past. But it's almost, the more I do it, the more that I want to do more. When in doubt, do more cardio. When in doubt, train harder. When in doubt, lower the calories. When in doubt, do more gear, quite frankly. That hasn't been as much of an issue as overdoing cardio and training and the caloric intake. But you just get to a point, or I got to a point where I dug a hole so deep that I couldn't get out of it. So to reset everything, I wouldn't have that time at that point. If it would happen at 10 to 12 weeks out, I'd have time to reset for a few weeks. Don't have that time at 5-6 weeks out. So, and arguably 4 to 6, but nonetheless, it's in that area where most of us start to push harder, whether we need to or not, and you just end up in a big hole. So he was going to be the guy that pulled back on the reins, kind of held me back, kept me in check, that sort of thing. At the last minute, and I own this is all on me. At the last minute, I decided, you know what? It's going to be a better idea to hand off control, complete control, to Justin. Just have him call the shots. I'll be a regular client. You just tell me what I'm not Skip. I'm just a client. So what I didn't take into consideration was he doesn't know my body. He doesn't know me. I'm a new client to him. But hindsight's always 20/20. I want to emphasize that. It's always easy to look back, whether it's me or anybody else, and go, well, okay, instead of this, I would rather do this. Instead of this, I should have done that. I'm trying not to do that, but it's very difficult to do because I've done this for so long. And I'm questioning that big question of whether this could actually be my last try. I may not go back to Masters Nationals. Make no mistake here, too, and I want to be clear on something else. Even if I had come in at 100% and I brought the package that I wanted to bring, I was in the heavyweight division and I was going to get smoked. I got smoked and I still would have been smoked at 100%. I'm a realist. I'm not, this isn't like I'm feigning humility here. I'm a realist. I see shit for what it is. I know exactly where I stand and I understand that I am not a high caliber Masters competitor. So I would have liked a mediocre field to show up, and that is not what happened. As soon as I lined up, I stepped out of the line. I looked down to the front, looked down to the back, and it's going to be the title of the article that I write for Elite FTS in the next couple days. I felt like a boy amongst men. And what it did was it made me feel like I was 14, just starting out again. When I would go to the Y Center gym where there were these, adults, men in there banging and clanging, and I'm walking in clueless. So it's kind of a full circle thing. I started this endeavor, this journey, if you will, feeling like a boy among men. And then what's supposed to be my last show, I line up and feel like a boy among men. It was very humbling. And it's difficult to go out on stage and enjoy yourself when you know you're not 100% and you know you're not going to threaten. So I was lucky enough to come out of it, if I'm being honest. I think with a 10th place finish out of 18, 16, something like that. Because it arguably could have been worse. Even going back over the pictures, the on-stage pictures. I have some very close friends who are very blunt and very honest, and I love them for that. Clients / friends, if I'm being clear here. And they just say, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, yeah, you look like shit. You could have been in far better shape. Like, this is not what you're capable of. And I knew that. So hearing that doesn't hurt my feelings. It just backs up what I thought, because I don't want to be bullshit and go, well, you're getting older and, you're just not 35 anymore. Yeah, but I'm competing against guys the same age and they are fucking badasses. So the age thing is kind of a bullshit line. It doesn't mean anything when you're competing against people who are your same age. So it was good to hear, but it just backed up what I knew. Here's the catch, though. The video in the pictures look 10 times better than I thought they did. They aren't great. My condition was not great, but it was way better than I thought. I literally thought that I looked like dog shit. So I looked better than I thought I did, but it's still nothing compared. And the pictures that are gonna be put up here any minute are going to contrast, because where I first started struggling right around that 6 week out mark, was when I went back and compared my condition at 6 weeks out this prep with where I was 6 weeks out at the last prep. And I'm like, ooh, like, where have my legs gone? Which is weird, because I was putting up PRs at 5-6 weeks out for my legs, and not just PRs in the last couple of years, but PRs that I hadn't put up since before 2020, when I tore my glute and had that 2.5 year knee rehab. So we're talking decent numbers for me during a prep at 5 weeks out, 6 weeks out, 7 weeks out. And yet my legs are arguably, I won't even say what the difference is. I'll let you see the difference, and you can contrast the pictures, and the pictures with my glasses this year, pictures without the glasses last year. But I probably don't even need to say that, because it's going to be pretty obvious. And understand that in both pictures, I'm depleted. So one set of pictures is going to make me look a whole lot fuller, like, oh, maybe you just had a high carb day. No. So there's also pictures that are going up now that are going to contrast the 6 weeks out from last year versus the 2 weeks out from this year at the same weight. The damn near the exact same weight. And you'll be able to tell right away, holy shit, the body comp is different. Body comp is dramatically different. So it's kind of an odd thing. So I have gone through, and in processing this since the show and since the prep has been done, obviously when you get food in you, you're not distracted by the million things that you have to do with the show. You got to be able to give yourself time. That's why I didn't do this video right away. And I didn't respond to people right away. I wanted that time to process it so that I understood what likely was different between last year and this year and what I would change moving forward if I do compete again. And like I said, it may not be Masters Nationals. Maybe it'll just be a regular show in Boca, 30 minutes down the highway. And it'll be the Southern States or something, just so that I can get back on stage to essentially showcase what I can do and almost kind of write this prep, if you will, to show people. I don't need to show myself. I already know what I'm capable of, but to show people, yeah, this is how bad I effed up, this last prep. That is still on the table. That's something I'm going to take months to figure out. And the truth is if I do that, I'm not going to be public about it. I'll do it. I'll get into, I'll get on stage and then I'll talk about it. That way there aren't going to be as many distractions. I don't have to handle as many questions. Hey, how's the prep going? I mean, everybody and their mother will reach out. People I went to school with, how's the prep going? I know you're doing that show. Is the show up yet? Pete yet? I don't like that. That's all a kind of a distraction. I appreciate the support. I'm flattered by it. But I also don't want to deal with it at the same time. I just want to focus on my work, and I want to focus on what I have to do to get through the prep itself and stay focused and just grind. So here's just some points. I put on my list pros and cons, but they're not even really pros and cons. There are things that I question that impacted the preparation or the prep this time that I didn't do last time. So as with anybody, I've been prepping for a long time. Basically, Justin and I have been prepping about as long. We met each other on the Anabolex forum in 2000, 2001. Nobody knew who we were. We didn't know who we were. And I could see right away, he's got his brain works different. He's outside of the box too, and he wants to understand why all this works. He's digging into the minutia, that sort of thing. So there are those things that I think, okay, I'd probably change this because this probably didn't work very well versus what I had done last year. Now, mind you, understand, I'm gonna say this again so that it's very clear. I couldn't get to the stage last year. So I can talk about how great my condition was, last year at the same body weight, but I couldn't get to the stage. So Justin is an integral component for me getting back on stage. The entire time, whether I thought it was going well or it wasn't going well, was very, very stress-free. It's so much easier to execute a plan versus second guessing every move you're making with the diet, with the cardio, the gear, everything. So it was easy and very, very stress-free until I started getting anxious about the last leg, the last 2 to 4 weeks. So some things that stand out that my clients are asking me, hey, did you learn anything? Did you pick up anything? Justin and I have very similar methodology. We have a lot of parallels, but there are some things that I picked up. One of them is HIIT cardio. I used to be absolutely 100% against it, but it did work relatively well if it was in moderation, once or twice a week. And it was funny because I actually kind of enjoyed it because I'd get a little bit of a pump out of it. The sessions seemed to go incredibly fast. And I'm like, wow, I'm done. I'm energized. This is pretty damn good. It also helped my training because of increasing oxygen uptake, VO2 max. Obviously, when you get leaner, that helps too. So was a double whammy in that sense. But the HIIT cardio did help my training. Arguably, it may have helped my PRs because there was more leg training. I consider HIIT cardio, that's mild leg training right there. So as long as it's scheduled away from your leg workouts and it's not gonna negatively impact your leg workouts, it can be great if it's not too frequent, and it wasn't. So that was a bonus. That was something, kind of a takeaway, if you will. Another thing that stands out is I am a big proponent of insulin use. I use it a lot. I use it frequently. I use it in cuts. I use it in the off season. It helps to keep me lean. I know I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole of explaining everything as to why, and you're probably not changing anybody's mind anyway. If you think it makes you fat, well, then maybe it makes you fat. It doesn't me, and it doesn't my clients, and apparently not Justin's clients either. Because I'm not saying he's big on insulin, but he's damn sure not against it, and he sees the benefit of it. When I pulled the insulin at about that 5-week, 6-week mark, there was a relationship, correlative, probably, causative, can't be sure. But there was a correlation in the sense that the progress from that point did start to slow down a little bit. I don't think that it was going to, I wasn't going to get to where I needed to get. I wasn't going to get into the condition that I needed to get into, but it became a less efficient process when I pulled the insulin. And I only pulled the insulin because the intracarbs were non-existent at that point. So I'm battling depletion, especially as it gets later in the week and I'm getting closer to a high carb day. It was just not something that I wanted to deal with at that point, and I was quite insulin sensitive, but it still slowed down. Another thing that stands out is Justin likes to fill out the last, usually 3 to 4 weeks. We kind of rode it another week or two, so I was filling out more and eating more, kind of eating up to the show for the last couple of weeks. But here's the catch. It's not that I didn't fill out. It was great. But eating those meals got pretty laborious. Like I was choking them down. That isn't the issue. The issue is the distension. I would look pregnant. So even after high carb days, there was an issue, and I'm going to come back around to this with Retta, so I'll not jump around. Point is there was a lot of distension, and I was getting anxious about that because nothing will make you feel older than old guy distension. Okay. In poses, not a big deal. You're really not going to, you'll see it a little bit. You'll be like, oh, okay, his waist could be a little bit smaller. A good example is this shot right here. The, one arm ab, showing off the pec and showing off abs and quads at the same time. It's not that it's a bad shot. It's not that condition looks all that bad, but that midsection is significantly bigger due to that eating. And that is not something, even though I'm standing next to older guys on stage, I've been around for a long time, 41 years of training. I've been through the 90s. I've been through the force feeding. I battled distension. So I want to keep that food intake down lower than what his methods or what Justin's methods are. So that was something that, hey, I was a good client. I just put my head down and I wanted to execute. I wanted to execute, but I didn't want to eat all that food. And not because I didn't fill out. I filled out quite well, which halted the fat burning process. And I feel that when I bottomed out at my weight, that scale weight hit about 200.2. I mean, it's barely over 200. So it's on the fence. I'm like, I could go in as a light heavy. I could go in as a heavy. We discussed it a few times. And I just basically stuck to my guns and said, I don't really care where I go in as long as it's my best package. And I think that's a good approach. In hindsight, because I was so close and I should have gotten a little bit leaner at that point with roughly 4 weeks left, 3 to 4 weeks, it would have been easier for me to drop into the light heavies because there's plenty of time at shows of this caliber because you can weigh in early. So I had a day and a half. Hell, I could have had almost 2 days to fill out. I would have had to fill out very carefully because I would have wanted to keep distension low. So yes, I would have battled with distension, but also wouldn't have been standing next to guys who were significantly bigger than me and with great structures. I don't know what the guys look like in the light heavies. I was too busy dodging heavyweights that were being thrown at me from both sides, during prejudging anyway. So I don't know what they look like. Maybe they look great. Maybe I would have stood next to them and gotten smoked too. That I don't know. These are all hypotheticals and it's guessing. But being that close, if I had it to do all over again, that close to the light heavyweight cutoff, I would have gone in as light heavy, I think. But again, hindsight's 2020. It is what it is. We discussed it quite a bit, and we were both on the same page. So you make those decisions and you live with them. Some of the, and I have these down as cons, not necessarily cons, but just things that I'm going to have to take if I compete again. I'm going to have to take a closer look at. One of the big ones. Well, I'm going to note the high volume of food because there was just so much food. We're talking meals, that were the last couple weeks as we fell out of, 360 grams of rice per meal, 425 per meal. That's a lot of food when you're battling distension. Now, for the average person who doesn't have distension, that's going to fill you out, and it's not much of an issue. And Justin, I think, wasn't seeing that distension, and because I was sending him still shots of of my poses. But I was working, I worked with Kenny Wallach for posing this year. And I'll go on record and say I wasn't sure I was going to work with him because I thought, what, I've posed for a long time. I'm good. I just need to practice it because I haven't done it in a while. No big deal. But I was glad that I did because the subtle changes, this guy's a fucking legend when it comes to posing. The subtle changes that he made, very, very subtle, made for dramatic changes in probably half of my poses. Anyone who's on the fence, and especially masters, because masters competitors don't tend to work with posing coaches as often as the open guys do. The old heads kind of think that they've got it, much like I was thinking, I've been posing for a long time. I'll be able to present my physique, just fine. But I was glad that I did. Huge difference. But I'm working with Kenny one day and he's talking and all of a sudden he stops. He goes, "What the hell is going on with your stomach, Skip? Like what?" I'm like, "I know. We tend to do our posing sessions a couple days after the high carb day." And I said, what I'm going to do, I said, it's so bad. Like I feel horrible. Like this distension is just out of control, worse than it's ever been. So I said, as the week progresses and I get more depleted, my midsection will come down dramatically. I said, "Kenny, here's what I'll do. I'm going to send you pictures every morning that I send to Justin until the end of the week, and you'll see the progression." So the next time we did the sessions, he goes, "Skip, you and I have been around a long time. We've pretty much seen it all. Been in this industry for years, decades. I have never seen someone transform throughout the course of the week like you do. By the end of the week, when you're depleted, your midsection looks great, but it looks horrible." I'm paraphrasing. This is basically what he said. "Looks horrible. You look pregnant. You're breathing through your stomach. It's just, your stomach is just out of control." And I laughed and told him, I hate it. I hate it because for at least 4 days after a high carb day, and understand this, when you're pushing big carbs and they're clean, it takes up a lot of room. If you're pushing big calories and it's a skip load or cheat meals, you can get a lot more calories in a smaller amount of food when it's shitty food. But when it's clean, it's taking up a lot of space. So it's making the distension arguably worse. And my high carb days were 5 to 6 meals of basically just everything is clean. There's almost zero fat, and you're just packing away carbs. And by the end of the day, those meals add up, and the distension is there, and then it just stays there. Now, there's a kicker here. There's another variable that I need to talk about that's important, that I think is probably the most obvious variable that changed things from this year to last year, and that's the retatrutide. Because of the slowing of gastric emptying, I think it really fed the distension, not just from the high carb days, but just in general. I started with the dose of 1.75 mg, which is 0.25 daily, and I had done that since the end of November. It was great. Coming off the end of my off season, going into the beginning of the prep, it was great. It was just beautiful. Really didn't have much. Of course, I don't anyway. I don't have a lot of cravings. I don't have an emotional attachment to food. I do like food, and I am a foodie. I can tell you where the best online cookies are. I can tell you where the best online cinnamon rolls are. I'm a burger aficionado. I know where the good burgers are, that sort of thing. Even brunches, when it comes to French toast and pancakes, I know that type of stuff. But those aren't foods that I cry about going without. I have been in this game and married to this game for so long that not having those foods is not an issue. I don't walk around starving. I don't walk around thinking, oh my gosh, when's my next high carb day? When's my next skip load? And with the Retta, even more so. I mean, there are times where I would eat something sugary and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm nauseous. Like, this is terrible. I never have been like this in the past. So the distension, I noticed at about the 8-week out mark, I'm thinking, man, I'm getting pretty lean. Things are going relatively well here. Like, I don't have too many concerns, but what the hell's going on with distension? So I decided to start to slowly titrate the retatrutide down. And I said, I'm going to do this basically through the show, maybe pull a unit a day, because at 0.25 milligram of retatrutide, the way that I dose it and the way that I reconstitute it, it's 10 units a day. So at that point, I was maybe 7 weeks out, and I said, I'm going to pull a unit every week or every 5 to 7 days. And nothing changed with hunger. Nothing changed, I don't think, with how I was progressing. But the distension started to come down a little bit, not dramatically, but meals were moving through me a little bit quicker. So it seemed to be a good thing. Now I wonder too, if I would have cut it earlier or cut it down earlier, had a lower dose earlier, how would that have happened? I don't know. That I can't be sure. But I will tell you this, it's enough of a concern. And it was the number one thing that stood out that was different from last year, because I was, and you've seen this in the pictures that are posted, contrasting last year to this year. I'm clearly not in the condition I was last year as far as even fullness. I was significantly full. I mean, you can see the legs, you can see the quads, you can see the condition at that weight versus at the weight this year where I just looked deflated, like someone has taken the air out of the muscles. And you may be thinking, oh, the gear was different. The gear wasn't different. I typically run and have for a while the same, very, very close to the same doses, but almost always the same compounds too. And did that from last year to this year. I kept it the same because it worked so well last year. I'm not going to change it. I don't fix things that aren't broke. So the gear protocol was essentially the same, right down to the growth hormone and right down to the insulin use. There really wasn't anything that was changed there. In fact, if anything, the growth hormone was a little less, maybe 2 or 3 IU per day, down from, 15 to 12, something like that. I have to check my notes, but not significant enough to be able to tell the difference. So then what you have is you have smaller size this year, arguably not as good of body composition, but stronger and hitting PRs. So when I hear from Justin, he's like, no, don't sweat it. We're going to fill out because, we're going to come in and land the plane in the last 3 to 4 weeks. I thought, you know what? That makes sense. That's why I'm feeling smaller. And as I fill out, I'm going to get tighter and it's going to be kind of like putting an air hose in each muscle. And I can't say that didn't happen. I did fill out, even though I showed up on stage flat. There's different reasons why I showed up on stage flat, but I was filling out from all the food. I just had this horrible distension issue that was difficult to control. And like I said, you're not going to see it in poses, but you're going to see it in transitions. And you're going to see it while you're breathing during the transitions. Even if you have good control, you still will see it because you have to breathe. And you typically are doing more breathing in the transitions from pose to pose. So that was a huge issue. The flatness on stage came from the fact that I get very, very watery from the higher carbs and from this feeding that we were doing to fill me out over, because I went from roughly 200 to about, I weighed in at 212. And I've never weighed that much. So where does water go? Water goes to the places where you hold the most body fat. So I struggle from the front. I can look like I'm ready, but then I have another 10 pounds from the back because the hips, it's not even the bottom of the glutes. It's the hips and lower back that have to come in. And when you're a masters competitor and you're 55, you have to balance out what part of that is body fat and what part of that is loose skin because you're 55 years old. So when you dry out and it is loose skin and it's not a body fat issue, you tighten up right dramatically. I've had a lot of clients that has happened to. If you do it right, you're not gonna go too flat. You'll be a little bit flatter. But if you go in really full into that water manipulation phase over the course of that last day and a half, you're not really going to lose enough fullness that it's noticed. You're just going to get into, you're going to be very dry, you're going to be very tight, and you're going to look great. What we did was we went very aggressively with the water plan, and the water plan of, manipulating water during that last day. And that's what contributed to that very flat look. And when I say very flat, my legs didn't have room to lose a lot of size. But where I noticed it the most was throughout my back. My chest just disappeared on the front lat spread. It was just not a great look. Did I get dry? Yeah, I got relatively dry. But to get dry and to get tight and to tighten up the hips and the lower back, if you have to trade that much fullness, it just ends up not being your best look. And all of these things played into just not being 100%. And it happens. It's disappointing, but it's not something you get a do-over for. So there's no sense really dwelling on it any more than you have to. So I have the fact that I show up, I'm not 100%. This is my last show. I'm really battling with this, because no one wants to go out if they're not 100%. If I'm 100% and I get smoked, okay, it happens. I don't have any control over other people. But when I'm not 100%, whether I get smoked or not, you want to go out with arguably your best package, or at least the package that you're happy with putting on stage. And I know I can do better. That doesn't mean that I need to take control and go back to prepping myself, though it's on the table. But at the same time, I think it's going to be a collaborative effect or a collaboration if I was to compete again, where Justin and I'm making more of the decisions to try to help to keep distension and things like that down. Maybe as an example, I'm not loading as hard for one day, but I'm loading with high carb, just for high carb days, not loading for the show. But for my high carb days, I split that up over 2 days so that volume of food is not as big with every meal, so that it doesn't feed the distension as much. And yet I still get the same amount of carbs, but it takes me a day and a half, or it takes me 2 days to get that amount of carbs in, versus just cramming them down that one day. And that's the same thing goes. I have the same questions for the last couple weeks. I love the idea of eating up into the show. I don't usually do that. I haven't usually done that in the past. I typically get as lean as I can get. I get into that condition that I'm good with, and I'm like, yeah, I'm there. And I kind of sit there and I wait until the last 3 or 4 days, and I slowly start to feed up from there. I like the idea of doing it for a couple weeks, just not as aggressively, because I'm battling that distension now that I didn't have to battle 20 years. Remember, I've competed and been training for a long time. So I know those differences, and I've seen those differences with my physique that a trainer or anybody else may not know about, or may not, because they don't know and they don't have the experience with my body of seeing those things change over the years. So, like I said, it's not just the first time we've worked together. So I think that it may come down to that collaboration where I'm making the decisions. He's kind of my second set of eyes. Hey, you're on track, you're getting too far ahead. Slow it down a little bit, pull it back, that sort of thing. I think that's probably going to be the right move. It may well have been the right move to do it this time, but we just didn't do that. I was not comfortable with that. I wanted out of making any of those decisions, and it was very stress-free. I just think it may have gone. Don't know for sure. It's a hypothetical, but may have gone better had we collaborated versus me just going, here, you don't know how I respond very well because this is the first time we're working together, but hey, if you can call all the shots, that'd be great. And I expect to be the best package I've ever put on stage. I mean, you're good, Justin. I'm good at what I do, but it's a big ask. It's a really big ask. And I think I assumed, because of his track record, that is what was happening. It was just kind of a formality. That's not fair to him either. He put 110% into my prep. There's no question. And he was bothered by the fact that it wasn't the package that we both wanted either. So, there may be another run in it. There may not. I don't know. There's a couple other things that I wanted to add that are minor, that were kind of takeaways too. And that is, Justin is a Whole Foods guy. He's not, and when I say Whole Foods, not the store, but eating food versus using, say, protein powders. And I'm a protein powder guy. Now, part of the reason I'm more of a protein powder guy these days is because it doesn't take up as much space in the stomach. There's not as much food. You take 50 or 60 grams of protein that, from chicken or beef, it digests kind of slow. Protein powder doesn't. It doesn't distend me as much. So my takeaway, and everybody's different, but my takeaway from that was like, okay, wait, this is the first year that I haven't used protein powder and I had more distension. Is that the only reason I had more distension? Of course not. But did it exacerbate the problem? It may well have. So I'm leaning towards going back to the protein powder. Might only be a couple, maybe it'll be 3. I don't know. I'd always gone 3 before. 3 protein drinks at some point, one of them being post-workout, and 3 to 4 solid meals versus 6 or 7 solid meals. The Retta as well. I will not use the Retta at the dose it's not a high dose, but at the higher dose that I was using. It'll either be cut completely, or it'll be cut and it'll be a lot less and a lot smaller dosing than what I did this year, because I think that played arguably the biggest variable when it came to the distension. That in the high volume of food for the high carb days and feeding up to the show as well. So that volume of food has to be more controlled for someone like me who battles distension. The only other thing that stands out is really high step count. And I understand why he did it. I'm relatively sedentary. I don't grocery shop. I have my groceries delivered. I don't shop for shit. Like, Amazon delivers everything, from cat food to groceries. Yeah, I mean, Uber Eats, quite frankly. If I'm going to eat something, and it's, a regular meal. I'm not going to go get it. I'll look down right now and see Adrian's Pizza a block and not even a block and a half away. It'll cost me $22 to have that by the time everything is said and done for them to bring that pizza over to me. But it's 90 degrees out there, and I'm not going out and walking down there to get it for $22. I will happily pay the $22. The point is I'm very, very sedentary. So he wanted me moving more. So we had a lot. He added a step count plus the cardio on top of that. I would counter and just say that if I'm sedentary, then maybe I don't need as much, because there could be, it's the argument of, if you have someone who's sedentary, you have a client who's sedentary, and then you have a client who's, say, an ER nurse, and they're constantly on their feet, they're constantly active for 12-hour shifts. 30 minutes of cardio is going to have a lot more impact on the person who's sedentary than adding 30 minutes to the person who is constantly active while they're working 12-hour shifts. So I say, and I usually do, function better and respond better with a lower amount of activity or a lower amount of cardio. To the point where that last couple weeks I had a TFL issue to where my knee wasn't even tracking right. I had a hard time. Got to the point where I couldn't walk on the treadmill to get my steps. So I had to switch to the elliptical so it was non-impact, because my knee was starting to hurt at like 2 weeks out. And I'm thinking to myself, I haven't had any injuries, nothing. My back hasn't bothered me. My knees are great. Everything is great for the entire prep. And then I get down to the last couple weeks. I'm like, oh, no. Don't get me now. Even practicing my posing was painful. And then it was obviously an inflammation issue. And I would argue that it was because it was so much work, even though it wasn't high intensity. The repetition was so high that I wasn't used to it, that it became a situation of inflammation, because it didn't take but 3 or 4 days after the show and it was gone. So there's that. But those are those minor things. Again, I'm picking apart. It's going to sound like I'm picking apart Justin and his approach, and well, he did this and that's wrong. That's not at all what I mean by going over this. I'm going over this because so many people reach out to me and say, what are the takeaways? Like, what did he do different? What did you do? And at first I said, you know what? I'm not going to detail too much, because this is Justin's proprietary, as far as I'm concerned, information. I paid for it. You're not paying for it. So why would I just hand it to you and be like, oh yeah, this is what Justin does? And I'm not going to disrespect Justin by doing that. But I do want to contrast the things, especially because it didn't go as well as we wanted it to. The things, I guess what I'm doing, if I'm being completely transparent, is I want people to know what I think could have been better to put the package on stage that Justin and I expected, because I am pretty consistent, or have been through the years, of being able to put a well-conditioned package on stage. And I don't feel like we did that. We could have put a better package on stage. And we both know that. So moving forward, if I'm going to do this again, how am I going to rectify this? And what am I going to change to do that? And so many people want to know, well, shit, you're usually on stage in good condition, but you weren't in your typical condition. Why is that? And I want to be able to explain that. So that's not a shot at Justin. That's not a shot at his methods. His methods work so well for the vast majority of people, but there are going to be those things, whether it's Justin or whether it's me, that sometimes those things, the methods that you use, they aren't going to work for 100% of people. And I fall into that category, especially when it comes to distension. So did I fill out from the added feeding and everything? Absolutely. It was beneficial in that sense. But I'm not 30 years old or 35 years old anymore. I don't have that elasticity and that midsection that can handle that amount of food over and over. I mean, I laughed and told my wife, I'm like, I don't even want to go to the pool. Like, I feel throughout this prep like I was a bodybuilder for about 2 days each week. That kind of sucks. That kind of stinks. Because usually during a prep, you're like, yeah, like I'm in ridiculous shape. I want to hang out at the pool. I hate to make it sound like showing off, but you kind of want to showcase the condition that you're in. You certainly don't just want to walk around in sweats and covered up all the time. At least I don't. I want to take advantage of that. Plus, these days are coming to an end anyway. I always am lean. I will always be lean. Even in the off season, I'm leaner than the vast majority of people. Maybe not my lower back and my hips, but you can't see that in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt either. But the point is I'm usually pretty lean, but not lean like you're prepping where you're just like, damn, like I'm lean as fuck right now. So you want to take advantage of that when you can. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to the beach. I'm not hanging out at the beach unless it were to hit that last day and a half, 2 days before I would do a high carb day. So that's kind of, I don't think I missed anything. The high volume of food, the water manipulation and everything else. We had to get really nasty with the water manipulation. And it did work for control of the water and tightening up, but it was also at the expense of quite a bit of fullness. So in the end, it's like, okay, what's the lesser of the evils? Maybe not being as tight, but being fuller. It's a hard call. It's a roll of the die. So, like I say, as far as the condition from last year to this year, I feel like my condition last year, I was so much fuller and just so much, even when I was in a depleted state at that same weight, that body composition, I think most people who see the pictures will agree with that. So if we can collaborate, if I'm going to do another show, and I don't know yet, but if we can collaborate and I make more of those decisions and he kind of just pulls me back and keeps me from getting too crazy, it probably will be a better package. Plus, Justin and I will be going into the second prep where he knows how I respond. He knows the issue and is very clear on the distension. He knows, we're just going to know a lot more. So what am I going to do? I don't know. But that's kind of the long and the short of it. Yes, I'm disappointed, but the shit happens. There isn't anything I can do about it. Dwelling on it isn't going to change anything. Quite frankly, maybe it'll motivate me for the off season and into another prep if that's what I decide to do anyway. We'll see. I'll have another talk with Justin. Make sure he still wants to work with me. I was apologizing to him left and right every time I had to reach out to him because I didn't want to be that client. And he assured me that I wasn't, but you never really know. So we'll see. But those are the details. Wanted to get that information out so that I didn't have to say it 150 times. I just need to decide if I'm going to do another one. We'll see. But I won't tell anybody until after it's done.
Loading to the skin. Loading to the skin.